Welcome to the Untold Tales audio anthology, written and narrated by Dr. Jeffrey A. Robinson. Starforce by Jeff and Matt Robinson. Staff Sergeant Bobby McKenna crouched down behind a row of small crates outside one of the odd dome-shaped buildings of an outpost on the planet Procyon 3. For the time being, he was safe. His pursuers had lost sight of him, but he wouldn't be able to stay hidden for long. The dark night shadows hid him for the moment, but he only had a short window of time to reach his destination, or he'd be stuck behind enemy lines forever. This was supposed to be an easy mission, he thought, a simple in and out. All the alien guards were supposed to have been pulled away from the primary target by a diversion on the other side of the outpost. That had been Bravo Team's mission, but it looked like they'd failed their objectives too. In the distance, he could hear small arms fire and the sharp pops of Starforce plasma weapons and the low buzzing of the Raptor disruptors. Checking the time on his wrist comp, he confirmed that he only had 7 minutes to reach his evac point, or he'd never leave this place, and the Raptors never took captives. Noting that his plasma rifle still had 3/4 of a charge, he took several deep breaths and broke into a dead run across the compound. With luck, he could make it to the next building without being seen. Luck, however, wasn't on his side tonight. He'd only crossed half the distance to another stack of containers in the alien spaceport before green bolts of energy flashed around him. Raptors, the strange reptilian aliens that Earth forces had been fighting for years, were slow and predictable, but they were relentless, single-minded, and knew no fear. Tucking into a diving roll, a disruptor bolt struck a nearby crate that disappeared in a flash of green light, leaving nothing behind but smoldering ash. Spinning, Bobby turned and fired 3 bolts at the approaching aliens, hitting all 3 of them. While numerous, Raptors were slower than humans, and they were also lousy shots. Bobby jumped to the side as multiple disruptor bolts impacted where he'd been a moment before. A rush of warmth spread over him as adrenaline from his combat augments flooded his system. He no longer felt tired or fatigued and seemed full of endless energy, but he also knew that this combat rush would only last a few minutes before he crashed, exhausted and weak. With his newly restored vigor, Bobby became a killing machine. He dodged and weaved, ducked and rolled in a blur of motion, firing almost continuously, and his aim was phenomenal. He never missed a shot. Each plasma bolt struck an alien, leaving them to drop to the ground with a smoldering hole burned in their chest. There ain't no end to these guys, thought Bobby. They just keep coming. Firing from the hip as he ran, he never paused or hesitated. In his wake, dozens of alien soldiers fell to the ground. Glancing up, Bobby noted that his evac point was on the roof of the communication building more than 100 yards away. But he had to time it right. He couldn't afford to be there too early or too late. Leaping up to a walkway on the side of the warehouse, he fired down at his pursuers. There were at least 20 of them that he could see, but they were all out in the open or standing tall behind low obstacles in the courtyard below. Fortunately, his plasma rifle had better accuracy at range than the alien disruptors. They're sitting ducks, thought Bobby. As bright green disruptor bolts splashed around him, he methodically picked off his assailants, moving about every 3 seconds to a new firing position. The Raptors, however, were too slow, and always seemed to shoot where he'd been a few seconds before. For a moment, Bobby thought he had the upper hand and would single-handedly outgun his opponents. That is, until his rifle started beeping. Glancing down, he saw that the energy cell in his weapon was almost drained. He was out of ammo. Shit, he thought. When it rains, it pours. Jumping down to the ground, he worked his way around one of the alien ground vehicles and waited. In a few seconds, one of the green-skinned soldiers inched past him, and Bobby silently dashed forward, burying his knife to the hilt at the base of the alien's skull. Catching the body before it hit the ground, he took the dead alien's weapon and worked his way to one side of his pursuers. They slowed as they approached the position where they'd last seen him. They probably think they killed me, he thought. All weapons fire stopped as the raptors methodically searched for his body. Stepping out from behind his cover, he opened fire with the strange weapon. There was no recoil, and he found it surprisingly accurate at close range. With almost all his opponents in view, he managed to spray out a dozen disruptor bolts in less than 5 seconds, and suddenly found himself alone, surrounded by small, smoldering mounds of ash. Laughing to himself, he took off for the communications building and hurriedly scaled a ladder on the side of the large dome. Looking up, he spied the evacuation life pod that was descending to the roof. It would only stay for 10 seconds before it took off again. Smiling, he thought, my timing is perfect. Finally, luck is going my way. As Bobby crouched on the roof, the life pod touched down and the door opened silently. However, as Bobby raced toward the door, a green disruptor bolt struck the pod, and half of it flared and disintegrated. As he screamed, "No!" more green bolts landed around him. Then he felt a burning sensation on his back, and the world around him exploded in green light just before everything faded to black. For a long moment, there was a complete lack of sensation. There was no pain. Neither was he tired or afraid. There was just a feeling of blissful peace. Then a world of sensation swept over him, as if every nerve in his body fired at once. Sitting up, he tore his new VR headset off and gasped for air. Blinking, he noted his buddies Joe and Tom standing nearby. "God," he said, almost shouting, "what a rush!" Both his friends laughed, and Tom asked, "So how's the new rig? Is it as good as the advertisements claim?" Still breathing in long breaths, Bobby nodded. "Man, it's better. The sensory augments make everything seem completely realistic, from sight and sound to physical sensation. And the mnemonic mods suppress your memory so you forget you're even in a game. It seemed totally and completely real." Joe nodded. "But it's supposed to be real, isn't it? It's based on the human-raptor war out at the colony on Procyon, right?" "Nah," replied Bobby. "Most of that's just Hollywood hype. It wasn't a real war. It was just a skirmish that occurred at a colony after it was first established. The raptors got hit back hard and retreated after a single firefight. They ran home so fast they've avoided all contact with humans since. The way I hear it, the colonists are quite satisfied with that. The aliens avoid humans, and the colonists leave the aliens alone. No one's looking for trouble." "Are you sure?" asked Joe. "I heard—" "Yeah, I'm sure," interrupted Bobby. "I researched it. Everything you hear is glamorized fiction. Most stories are based on a movie that they made and a few ebooks and a short comic book series." Bobby continued, "I personally know a guy in the Starforce who's going out on the next ship to the colony, and he confirmed that the conflict with the aliens is a lot of BS. In any case, it's more than 11 light years away, and it would be impossible to carry out a real war so far from home. It takes more than 3 months to get to Procyon, even with the faster-than-light star drives. Anyway, that single incident was 10 years ago, and there's been no fighting since. You're just hearing stories spread by conspiracy theorists. Okay, said Joe disappointingly. I thought the simulations were based on real aliens. Nah, responded Bobby, but it sure seemed real. So can I try out the new rig? Asked Tom anxiously. No way, replied Bobby, grabbing the VR headset. I'm not done. Plug me back in and let me try that last run again. As he sat down and settled into his gaming chair, the game intro started and he heard the familiar phrase, "Welcome to Starforce." Then the mnemonic mods activated, and he lost all awareness and memory that he was in a game. Senior Technician Cole approached the watch commander in the Ops Center and said, "Sir, I have another candidate for your review." Commander Welch took the datapad from the technician and studied it for a moment. "Impressive," he said. "Near-perfect scores. More than 800 sorties played. Have these stats been confirmed?" "Yes, sir," said the tech. The candidate recently acquired the newly released Opcom system with the latest sensory and memory implants. Biometric readouts in the headset indicate that he's in excellent physical condition. Moreover, since he started playing a year ago, his muscle memory has increased 60% and his reflexes by 55%. Most recently, he achieved a near-perfect score on the final suicide run. Does he meet the other requirements to be an involuntary inductee? Yes, sir. A background check revealed that he's within the prime age window, he's single, and has a low-paying job. It seems he spends all his time working out at the gym and playing Starforce games. Overall, he scores 97 percentile or higher on all measures. Excellent, said the commander. Send his name to recruitment for disposition. Normal or special? Asked the tech. Special, of course. I don't mean to be disrespectful, sir, but may I ask why? The commander's eyebrows narrowed, and he looked at the technician's name tag. You're new here, aren't you, Corporal Cole? Yes, sir. I just transferred in from the statistics section a week ago. All right, then. I'll explain. We've been fighting a losing war with the Raptors for more than a decade now. The entire conflict was classified since the first skirmish on Procyon 3, so few people really know about it. After all, we don't want the world panicking about hostile alien invaders, do we? Anyway, we lost the colony after defending it for a year. The enemy is so far away we just couldn't resupply troops fast enough, and we've been losing ground to them since. It's also horribly expensive to send soldiers light years away to fight battles that aren't going well. We haven't been able to reestablish a colonial base, and we can barely maintain a few scattered outposts. The guerrilla war we've been fighting for the last 10 years hasn't been going well. Until recently. About 6 months ago, Command and Control adopted a new strategy. Instead of fighting the aliens head-on, we've started running covert missions that target their key infrastructure. We've managed to sabotage spaceports, manufacturing hubs, power distribution systems, and communication centers. For the first time, we're hitting them hard and hurting them badly. The brass figure that in a few more years they'll lose the ability to launch anything into space, and maybe then we'll be able to get past their orbital weapons platforms and bomb them out of existence. However, we still need to maintain a fighting force of at least 2,000 special soldiers trained for those missions. Normal recruitment doesn't work. When we explain the job to volunteers, and tell them there's a chance they'll never return, they decline to go on what they feel is a one-way trip to a suicide mission. Fortunately, the Procyon War Powers Act, passed by Congress after that first battle, authorizes Starforce Command to involuntarily conscript people that meet specific entry requirements, like this individual, Bobby McKenna. He'll be drafted, screened, and shipped off to the front where he'll complete his training. But what if he doesn't want to go? Asked Cole. The commander shrugged. It doesn't matter. If he resists, we'll just make some mnemonic adjustments and he'll forget that he ever objected at all. But won't he be missed? Asked Corporal Cole. Not really. One of the criteria for the special draft program is that inductees have no close families, spouses, children, or the like. In any case, recruitment will simply pick him up, and to anyone that knows him, he'll simply seem to disappear. Cole started to say something, but Commander Welch interjected. Don't worry, Corporal. Such things happen all the time, more often than you think. Crime is bad in the big city. People disappear all the time. Handing the datapad back to the tech, the commander added, just send this guy's name over recruitment and get back to work. You're dismissed. The technician took the tablet, saluted sharply, and left. As the tech left, the commander thought that just a few years ago the idea of using a game to select, vet, and train Special Forces personnel would have seemed ludicrous. But with advances in bionic and mnemonics, it had proven to be an effective and reliable tool. Grinning to himself, he thought of how it was now a popular game played around the world, and muttered under his breath, "Welcome to Starforce." Thank you for listening. As you know by now, we love our listeners, fans, patrons, and supporters. Please let us know what you think of our podcast and our stories. The best way to do that is to subscribe to our podcast at untold-tales.com. By doing so, you'll be added to our mailing list so you can be notified of upcoming episodes, blogs, and other information. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.